Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shockwave48 here. Welcome back to another video. And of course, we got some new information. What's going on? My Hero Academia season 6, and of course, Bakugo being revived, and he has a new heart and everything. But we don't know how he's going to turn out to be. So we're going to probably get information, and pretty much we got some new things going on about One for All, of the second user of Bakugo, which I really don't entirely understand. So we're going to find out this information right here, right now. So make sure you hit that like button if you're watching, subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll be notified to all my videos and new updates. Alright, so that being said, let's get right into the video.
After the absolute bombshell that My Hero Academia's latest chapter dropped, the fandom is in a frenzy trying to make sense of a shocking turn of events. But it is not only the need for devastated fans to cope with the apparent loss of a beloved character that has sparked discussion. The chapter also gives new evidence to a long-held fan theory. Fans of the series have been speculating that there has been some kind of connection between Katsuki Bakugo and the second wielder of One for All for a while now. And after this latest chapter, many argue that this theory is looking more plausible than ever. In light of that new evidence, it's high time to take a look at why this theory got so popular to begin with. What evidence do its proponents cite? And how well does it hold up after this chapter? And because I know it's the question all of us are asking right now, if this theory were to be proven right, what would it mean for Bakugo? Background. First though, we have to make sure that we are up to speed on why this theory is suddenly relevant again. Sure, it's never really gone away, but one panel in the most recent chapter is getting people talking again. Chapter 362 sees an already injured Bakugo throwing everything into one last charge at Shigaraki, a move that, while impressive, ends in tragedy. And the panel everyone is talking about comes during that charge when Shigaraki / All for One wonders why Bakugo's attack is making him feel so uneasy. He then is reminded of his previous fight against, you guessed it, the second user of One for All.
Well,
It seems pretty suspicious
really
that Shigaraki All for One would be thinking about the second user right now if there wasn't some connection there. Even if that's as far as the theory ever goes, I think that pretty much confirms that at the very least, Bakugo and the second user are supposed to parallel each other. After all, Shigaraki All for One directly links the two of them in his mind, an indicator that even he sees the resemblance. It's one thing when fans notice the similarities between two characters, but when somebody in-world makes that connection, we can be pretty sure that is no longer a coincidence. With that said, the question we are left asking is, then, what kind of connection is it? Now there are a couple of theories about that, one of which we just touched upon.
The second user looks just like Bakugo with the star
are just parallels, linked thematically, but not literally. But on what grounds do people make that claim, and is the evidence for the other theories there? But listen, before we dig into the evidence, Bakugo may or may not have enough plot armor to make it out of this, but you sure can if you subscribe with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash the like button to tell us you're tuning in. Major theories. If you look at fan discourse surrounding the possibility of Bakugo's connection to the second user, most of the theories you find are going to fall into one of three categories. The first of those is that the second user is Bakugo's ancestor, making the two distantly related. I can't say it's the most popular per se, but this is the theory that I usually hear the most about. It leans heavily into the near identical appearances and the possibility that they might possess similar quirks. The second theory is a lot more down to earth, postulating that though they are not related, Bakugo and the second user are intentionally written to parallel one another. And the last major theory is by far the wildest, popularly dubbed the Bakugos theory. It argues that not only are the two linked, but they are actually one and the same. How is this possible? Well, obviously with the help of a little time travel. As its name suggests, fans of the Bakugo hypothesis theorize that Bakugo traveled back in time to become the second wielder of One for All in order to secure the future somehow. The method of time travel usually isn't really discussed, nor is the fact that we're pretty sure One for All users need to be dead to be in the Vestige world, so Bakugo being the second user, while still alive in this timeline, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's an off-the-wall theory, but it has its share of believers, so it warrants a place in a discussion like this for sure. Granted, these aren't the only theories out there. While researching for this video, I came across other more fringe theories that I hadn't seen before, like one arguing that Bakugo might be the second user's reincarnation instead of his relative. Others include speculation that the second user is a version of Bakugo from another dimension, or All for One trying to make things right in this timeline. Similar, but not identical to the Bakugo theory. And there's also the theory that Horikoshi is trolling us with similar character designs and backstories to make us believe there is something there that isn't. While Horikoshi does love his fake outs, I feel like we could pretty safely rule out the latter now that a more tenable connection between the two has been alluded to. Even if they never caught on within the fandom, you have to admire the creativity of My Hero Academia fans in coming up with explanations for the similarities between these two characters. Or in the case of the troll theory, their cynicism. However, none of these theories would even be getting off the ground without evidence that fans perceive as hints at the two being connected. But what has Horikoshi written so far to nudge the fandom in that direction? Let's take a look at the evidence. Point number 1, they look alike. Okay, I know it's as basic as it gets, but when you're talking about Bakugo and the second user, there's really only one place you can start. They look almost identical. From the iconic explosion hair to the shapes of their eyes. Fans immediately saw the resemblance between Bakugo and the second user when the latter's face was revealed. While some might argue that similar character designs are inevitable in a series with this many characters, it definitely bears mentioning when one of them so closely resembles one of the protagonists of the series. We don't actually see the second user in the Vestige world for quite a while, and even in the chapter where his face is finally shown, he has his back turned for most of the time he is on page. However, even in that state, he bears striking resemblance to Bakugo. His hairstyle is extremely similar, and he is wearing arm bracers similar to Bakugo's. And we later see that their faces
All the
are
second
similar
user's
as well.
gauntlets are way
Even
cooler
though
than
he has
his.
a large diagonal scar across the center of his face, it would be incredibly easy to mistake the unnamed second user for an older Bakugo if you looked at the panel out of context. Honestly, this feels like both the strongest and weakest piece of evidence we have at the same time. On one hand, it is the connection that started it all. This theory would probably never have even gotten off the ground if not for the fact that the second user looked enough like Bakugo to turn people's heads. But on the other hand, it also doesn't really tell us anything on its own. With massive casts and artists constantly having to come up with new designs, characters in manga often look alike for no other reason than it is inevitable. But is this particular similarity just a coincidence like that? While a lot of fans think it is, the latest chapter has made that position a lot harder to defend. But okay, we now know what got this ball rolling. There is a tangible reason to thinking that this theory might have some merit. But there's also got to be more to it than just that, right? This can't be the only reason people think that there might be something going on here. And indeed, it is not. Point 2. Their quirks might be similar.
Wait, you said there was a kid in Mondstadt who was good at making bombs? Now, they aren't much.
We already briefly touched upon this, but some see another connection between the two in that they both wear arm bracers. Since Bakugo's bracers are related to his quirk, many have inferred that the second's are too. This has proven to be fertile ground for speculation because we still have no idea what the second user's quirk was. Of the pieces of evidence we have, I have to say I think this one is the most compelling, and that is largely thanks to what little we know about the second's quirk. It is the only quirk in One for All that we haven't seen Deku use yet, and the second warned him that it isn't to be used lightly. Since the stockpiler quirk has mutated his ability into something far more powerful than it was when he possessed it, it would be dangerous to use rashly. He describes it as a very specific but useful power, and says that using it would be a last resort. Those are some pretty strong words from the second wielder. And it's saying that made readers curious about what the ability actually is.
I really
There
want
is
to
no
know.
doubt in my mind that we will soon find out,
last
as an unlocked
resort
final
is.
quirk is exactly the kind of trump card Deku will probably be needing in the near future. Given the likelihood that a quirk reveal is in the cards, that answer might make or break this theory. Why? Well, there are two reasons. Firstly, a similar quirk would prop up the theory that Bakugo and the second are related. Since many quirks are passed down genetically, a blast type emitter quirk like Bakugo's might hint at them being distantly related, which many fans have been arguing all along. I think it's safe to say that if it is revealed that the second's quirk is at all similar to Bakugo's, it is probably going to break the internet. And honestly, since Bakugo's quirk is both extremely powerful and supported by a pair of arm bracers, it's not hard to see why hopeful fans of the series believe that things are pointed that way. And amidst all the other shocking developments in Chapter 362, there is one moment that gives this reasoning a little more credibility. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, Shigaraki all for one feels uneasy while fighting Bakugo, and realizes that those feelings of discomfort have something to do with his resemblance to the second user. This implies that Bakugo somehow reminds the All for One half of the Shigaraki All for One hive mind of his old enemy, and I really doubt that it's just because they look alike. In all honesty, we don't have nearly enough context to know what that means yet, so this reasoning is really just speculation. But it doesn't seem unreasonable to me to guess that the thing that reminded Shigaraki of the second user was Bakugo's quirk. It's possible that the second user's quirk or the way he fought were similar enough to Bakugo's that Shigaraki found them uncannily familiar. Do we have any hard evidence of that? No, not really.
Maybe a little.
The similarity Shigaraki All For One is seeing could be his attitude, his resilience, or any number of other things that aren't his quirk. But it is very possible, and if it were true, it would be a pretty strong hint the two are somehow related. Also, mind you, All For One's mentality is heavily skewed towards quirks. He doesn't really care about perseverance or heroics and things like that. He is all about quirks. That ideology, that idealistic crap is just nothing to him. He's all about quirks, so it makes sense that he is looking specifically at how Bakugo is using his quirk, because he started using it very differently than he was previously during their fight. Point 3. Thematic parallels. External similarities are an undoubtedly important aspect of the Bakugo second user theory, but equally important to fan theorists are the roles each character plays in the story. If you're looking carefully for them, there are quite a few narrative parallels between Bakugo and the second user. The biggest of these is that the second user's relationship with Yoichi, the original owner of the One For All quirk, seems very analogous to Bakugo's reluctant friendship with Deku. The parallels are evident right off the bat when we learn the story of the second user's involvement with Yoichi in his first full appearance. Like Yoichi, the unnamed second and third users lived through All For One's golden years, and they were active in an anti-All For One resistance movement that rescued Yoichi from prison. That rescue enabled the fight against All For One that persists to this day to truly begin. And Yoichi credits the moment that the second user reached out his hand to him with the true birth of the One For All quirk. Reaching out his hand. Where have we seen that before? This parallel is made pretty clear by a panel which shows the second user extending his hand to a seated Yoichi. This is a visual that has repeatedly been applied to Deku and Bakugo, most notably when Izuku tried to
just like when they were kids, when Deku tried to help them up.
There are a few other instances where the visual pops up. The scene in which the two share One For All in the Two Heroes movie comes to mind, but I specifically chose that panel to highlight because it looks virtually the same with the roles reversed. One of them is seated and in need of rescue, while the other, standing, reaches out their hand. You only need to look at the panel side by side to see that they are uncannily similar, but this parallel actually goes both ways. On several occasions, the second is referred to as the leader of the group that rescued Yoichi when he was in prison. This is very reminiscent of Bakugo leading the charge to bring Deku back to UA during the Tartarus Escapees arc. It's less literal than the hands parallel, but definitely oddly similar. No matter how you look at it, it is a little suspicious that the second user and Bakugo, who both have similar connections to other One For All users, both led rescues of their respective friends. And to top it all off, the second user even seems to know that Bakugo would be the one to get through to Deku, calling him the one thing that could bolster him. Which, okay, that's pretty suspicious. Why does the second user know about Bakugo? You could theorize that he remembers him from the two sharing One For All at the end of Two Heroes, or that the vestiges have some kind of understanding of Deku's emotions that would give them information about his close relationships. But fans argue that it could also mean that the second user either is Bakugo or is connected to him somehow, explaining why he would single him out among Deku's allies as the one who had the best
future
chance
self,
of mating him.
maybe.
Either way, all that goes to show that these parallels, at the very least, shed light on how important Bakugo has been to the development of One For All. Yoichi calls the moment that the second user reached out to him the birth of One For All. And the many similarities between that pair and Bakugo and Deku seems to hint that Bakugo is somehow just as key to the course development as the second user was. There's also the matter of outlook. With a relatively cynical but pragmatic personality, the second user sometimes seems like a more mature Bakugo. Something that those who adhere to the time travel or dimension hopping theories might point out as evidence that Bakugo actually is the second user. I don't really buy that, but it is definitely a similarity that might turn heads. There are obviously a lot of connecting parts to this puzzle, and now we have a pretty good idea of why this theory gained so much traction in the fandom. There's something appealing about the idea of the story being so interconnected that a character who is vital to its resolution might neatly parallel or even be closely tied to someone who lived generations ago. And frankly, Horikoshi has historically been pretty good about building up those kinds of connections and payoffs. From the long-awaited reveal that Dabi is a Todoroki,
other than the fact he's still alive
and a trainer long after most of us
he's
assumed
back.
he'd forgotten, he tends to finish when he starts. So even though the evidence isn't overwhelmingly hard to ignore, it is a pretty good hypothesis at this point. But oh man guys, this thing just got a whole lot more complicated. The elephant in the room. So what are we supposed to do with the whole death thing? As of chapter 362, Bakugo is, as far as anyone knows at this point, medically dead. That shocking twist obviously throws a huge wrench in things, which is pretty confusing, given that the chapter also contained our clearest hint that we've gotten yet about their connection. Why bother to bring the second user up in relation to a dead character? Where would the theory even go from there? Well, to that end, it is time to indulge in a little bit of wild theorizing of our own. Since the details of Bakugo's apparent death were leaked, fans have been scrambling to figure out how his death could be undone, and some have argued that the second user's unknown quirk might be a part of that. One idea that keeps coming up is that the second user has some sort of resurrection quirk. I don't know how that could explain the second user's use of bracers or any other possible connection between his quirk and Bakugos, but it sure does fit the criteria of a specific, useful, and dangerous quirk to only be used as a last resort. If that were the case, then the connection is obvious. Bakugo's survival relies on Deku unlocking that quirk and using it to revive him. That might not be the kind of connection fans have been speculating about, but it would definitely provide a good enough reason for the second user to have been mentioned at such a pivotal moment. And that isn't necessarily mutually exclusive with the theory that Bakugo might be related to or a parallel of the second user. Of course, we can't count out the possibility that their connection will be confirmed posthumously, but won't actually affect Bakugo in any way. One of the most glaring holes in all these theories to me is that I don't see what Bakugo's ties to the second user adds to the story or his characterization, other than perhaps a hint at how central he is going to be to Deku fully mastering One For All. So it wouldn't surprise me if the second user told Deku about his connection to Bakugo in the Vestige Realm, or some other sort of anticlimactic info dump that wrapped up the loose ends without actually, well, doing anything. So it's possible that we could get confirmation that these two are related or somehow connected without any measurable impact on the story. In that case, I think it would be safe to assume that their connection was only important so far as it set up a parallel. Kind of disappointing, not gonna lie, but it could happen, and it wouldn't require the plot to find a way to revive Bakugo. It could simply be a rallying cry for Deku. If the second user revealed that he was related to Bakugo, it would be like having a part of his fallen friend with him in the Vestige world. Do I actually like or believe that theory? Not so much, but it is possible. But listen, where this theory goes next is anyone's guess. I'm decently sure that it is going to go somewhere, but beyond that, we are all in the dark, on the precipice of learning more, but only able to make educated guesses. Is the second user Bakugo's relative, the key to his survival, or something else? Is Horikoshi gutsy enough to try and drop a time travel or dimension hopping reveal on us this late in the game? Or are we going to be treated to a resolution that confounds all our theories? We would love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all.
Okay. Alright. That is a lot of information to hold on to, but to me, I didn't even know that Bakugo became the second user when he died. I just thought it could be possible that he's the second user, or maybe that's just his, I don't know, his future self. It really explains a lot. I mean, that has to be the most craziest information I've seen right now in My Hero Academia. So much. But I did enjoy it, so I'm not going to put more details into it. But I'm just glad that Bakugo's okay. He has a new heart. He's going to come out strong, powerful, and then he's going to strike back at Shigaraki. I don't know if he's going to survive this, or he's probably going to buy some time till Deku arrives. Or maybe probably Deku's going to probably join forces with them to take out Shigaraki. It really all depends. I mean, I'm just a guesser, so I'm just guessing out loud here. So we got time. We got time to find information when the series starts. I mean, all the fact we're seeing a bunch of manga, but you know, we like to see information on what's going on. So yeah. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. In the meantime, stay tuned for more. Subscribe for more updates, and I'll hook you back with another video. Peace.